So welcome to the first of the beginning of the Executive Black Belt class. This is the first lecture that we're going to have. So we'll take a little bit of extra time kind of talking through some of the background and all that. We will cover a full introduction to Six Sigma, to Lean Six Sigma. Like we said, we'll cover some of the standard knowledge, the standard language and things like that. I think for most of you, this will be a discussion that you are already, that you're very familiar with, which is great. So it'll probably be just a little bit of review and a lot of sort of mom and apple pie sort of talk today as well. But hopefully we can move pretty quickly and ground ourselves enough in the language. So anyway, to get started, what I thought we'd do is we'll take a little bit of time to go over what the outline of the course is, what we're going to cover throughout the course. I do want to take through some time with all of us on the meeting, some time to go through how we should set up our or how you should, I'm saying we, but I'm already set up, how we should set up for a couple of different things. One is making sure that we can access the straight line counts online, and downloading to our machine a couple of different things. Now, you can do it after the lecture, but I just want to show you how it's all done. So that'll be that. And then we'll go into it, about 90 minutes or so, real introduction to Lean Six Sigma, talk through some of the background. I'll spare you the history. I'll let you read about that. But, you know, what's the infrastructure? What are some of the principles that drive it? Have a robust discussion around that. I'll take a little time to summarize. And then I want to talk all of you through, since it's the first time we're doing it, through the first assignment, which hasn't gone out today, or hasn't gone out yet. You're going to get it soon. It'll be a little bit after this lecture. You'll get the first assignment. It does involve some collaboration with other folks in the class, so you'll also get contact information for the other people in the class or concurrent with that, I should say. So that's what we're going to cover today. I guess before to start everything, maybe what we can do is let's just take a little bit of time to let's see. Let's just take a little time to introduce ourselves. Let's see. So as we're doing that, you know, make sure you say your name, sort of what you do currently. Okay. What you do currently, what your experience is with Lean Six Sigma. I use LSS for Lean Six Sigma. So when you see that throughout the book, that's what that is. You probably already know that. That's fine if you do. And if you have project work that you're working on, briefly discuss the project that you're working on. If you don't, that's okay. You can just kind of reveal that, and we'll move on. So I think you all know me, and you all got my bio. So you know I've been doing this. I've been running Straight Line Performance Solutions now for 6 years, and prior to that I was a Six Sigma consultant, and prior to that I was a practicing black belt and green belt. In fact, I still do that. As a master black belt, I still do act as either a practicing master black belt or a practicing black belt sometimes, even sometimes a team member. In fact, ran 2 projects, one of which Shani and Sue are fairly familiar with, the front-end quoting project at Connecticut last year. And I ran a fairly big project on 35 warehouses throughout the company, or throughout the country, for a large food wholesaler called LSS and help them really kind of revamp their whole auditing from how they display things to their daily activities to their measurement system. So that's what I'm doing. And so why don't we start by going around to various people. Why don't we start, Jim, would you be willing to start?
Sure. My name is Jim Sindoma. I'm the owner of Sterling Innovations Group, and we're a management consulting group, and we have limited experience with Lean Sigma. We've run a couple of projects. I would consider myself green belt level, and I want to move up to the black belt level, obviously. We have a couple of projects going on, pretty much straightforward, out of the book Lean, and that's about all I can say because we're sworn to secrecy. So we're located in upstate New York, and we've been around since 2001.
And yeah, Jim has besides I know Jim personally. Besides being the business owner of Sterling Innovations Group, he also ran a steel. What was the business that you did before? I don't want to.
We were steel. Yeah, we were Valley Steel Fabricators, and it was I guess I call it an experiment. We bought a sick company and then applied the principles of Lean Sigma to turn it around, and that's my first introduction. And then I met Mark, who really got me interested and on track towards a black belt. So, so it was our initial effort was pretty much a pure Lean. And then the Six Sigma came in after I met Mark. So.
All right, great. Yeah, and Jim also has experience at Corning, so background in manufacturing as well. I want to say that to everybody just because not everybody has had the manufacturing, so I think that's helpful. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Let's see. How about next, Shani? Shani, you might have the mute button on. Okay, for the moment, let's move on. Sue, would you be willing to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sue Cote. I work for Connecticut, which is a health insurance company based in Connecticut. I am currently the business process improvement consultant for Connecticut. I've been in this role for a couple years. I am currently a green belt, and I got certified through Mark's organization, Straight Line. And we do have a current project, and it's called the Net Promoter Score. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but it's to assess how loyal your customers are with your organization, and Shani and I will be working on that project together. And I'm currently working on other Lean Six Sigma projects, and Shani and I are working together on a pharmacy authorization project as well as getting certified for black belt.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, let's move a little bit farther west. So Patrick, would you be so kind as to go next?
Absolutely. My name is Patrick Walensky. I work for Baptist Health here in San Antonio. It's a hospital organization owned by Vanguard. I work on the operations team here, which is part project management, part operational improvement. And last year, my experience with Lean was we had all of our black belts here in San Antonio put on a 4-day training class that had a small project that went along with it. So pretty familiar with the terminology of the Lean side of things. And my project that I'm working on now is DRG variability, looking across a specific DRG to see the variability and cost, type of care for different physicians, different facilities across our system here in San Antonio.
Okay, fantastic. And for those of us who are not in the know about DRG, DRG is what, diagnosis code type thing? I don't know what the acronym is. But.
Diagnosis related group.
Okay, I
didn't. Diagnosis related grouping, yes. It's just, in this case, it's a specific surgery that we're looking at, type of surgery.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent, excellent. Okay, and let's move now to Brad.
Yeah, this is Brad White. I work with Patrick at Baptist Health. I was trained as an industrial engineer a few years ago. That's what I got my master's in. Before that, I was in the military. The Army is where I was first exposed to Lean Six Sigma, more the Six Sigma side of the house than the Lean. I've been working at Baptist for a year as an operations improvement engineer, and I recently completed my Master Black Belt, so I'm doing things a little bit out of order.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, Brett. So as you can tell, we have varied backgrounds in terms of experience with Lean Six Sigma, as well as maybe comfort with some of the techniques that we're going to be looking into, and so I think that's very helpful. It's also helpful that we have kind of a varied background in terms of where we come from, what companies we work for, and so forth. Shani, have you joined yet? I know she's on the call. Hold on just a second. Let's see if we can. See if I can get to the.
Mark, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm having a little trouble with this phone in this particular room. I apologize for that. So I'm just going to sort of ditto what Sue had said, that we are business performance improvement consultants, so we get assigned to initiatives where we go in to assess business areas, and sometimes it is something that we apply Lean Six Sigma to, and other times it's something that it's either a training issue or other types of things that we would improve the business performance on. And we're currently working on the NPS initiative. That's the project that we're going to be applying to the Black Belt, as well as on the pharmacy authorization process and a few other projects that we've been working on over the past couple of years.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shani. Okay, well, I think without further ado, then we should move on, and let's go through some of the stuff that's in the binder. So I want to take us through the course outline. Jim, you'll just have to do your best to follow along until we can get you that binder. And I'll try and be a little bit extra, I guess, explicit in how I describe where we are, because I'm going to be moving around a little bit. So we'll start out with talking a bit through the course outline, and this starts on slide 2. Normally, we're not going to be covering the slides so literally as we will be today. Today, we're going to be a little bit more deliberate in how we cover the slides. In the future, we won't be. It's just just starting to get out, and we'll do it this way. So, starting on slide number 2. Let's just kind of walk through that. So, this is what's really we're going to talk about what the course is all about, what the learnings are going to be, and to help you understand sort of what are the materials that we're going to be using, what are we going to be using it for, and then we'll get started on the stuff that you need to get from the Internet. So hopefully you have all received, with the one exception of Jim that we know, the following materials. So you should have received in the mail the course binder, the DMAIC Navigator, which is printed out at the back of that document, but also there's an electronic version which we'll get to you today over the Internet. You also all are enrolled into Straight Line's platform. So you'll have the data files, the templates, and the tools. They're all located on the platform, but so are several other tools that you'll have access to, and file sharing, which I think you'll find helpful throughout the course and hopefully throughout your working career as well. As part of this, you will receive access to the shareware program, Excel Statistics. I know a number of you have Minitab, and that's fantastic. I'm still going to make essentially Excel Statistics mandatory because I think some of the learning that we'll do and some of the structure on something I call the data analysis algorithm is really going to help having that tool, and I think you'll see the real value of it. Now, does it give you everything that Minitab does? The answer is absolutely no. It's absolutely not. But it's going to be very, very helpful for learning. So for those of you who have Minitab as well as Excel Statistics, that's going to be really good. Minitab is one. And then you'll also receive periodically, once a week throughout the course, you'll receive assignments. Now, the course binder, I should say, you're going to get two of them. You've got the one for weeks 1 through 4. You'll get the one for weeks 5 through 8 in a few weeks. I should say, please stop me, interrupt me anytime you need to if you have a question or anything like that. Additionally, I just want to make sure we're on the same page with this. The lectures that we have twice a week, those are required. It's not optional. If you do happen to miss, we are recording the sessions. I'm recording this as we speak, and that's going to be posted on the website. You'll be able to view that. But please do tell me beforehand if you can't. Shani, thank you for telling me that you won't be able to attend a couple of the lectures coming up. It's helpful that I know. Also expected that you attend the weekly coaching sessions. Now, those coaching sessions are going to start next week. So if you're signed up for Wednesdays, it'll start on the 18th. If you're signed up for Thursdays, it'll start on the 19th, and so forth. Okay? Finally, it doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's important that you complete the assignments and turn them in on time. Okay? That way, well, first of all, it's going to help. There's going to be some collaboration, so that's going to hopefully put some meaning behind actually doing it on time, but also for me to read them over in a timely way and give you appropriate feedback. I need to have them in a timely manner as well. Okay, so the framework that we're going to follow is essentially 3 different areas. We'll talk a little bit about the essential soft skills that every black belt, every green belt, but especially black belts need to have. For you to be effective, you're definitely going to, as a black belt, you're definitely going to need to have skills to be able to negotiate. For example, what the appropriate scope of a project is. Green belts can get away with running projects that are contained within their department, but often black belts, in order to be really successful, they have to do the tougher projects, the projects that go across departments or things like that. So we will be covering some of those. Communications and project management, all those are important. But also, as you've probably surmised from getting that book, we'll be talking about some of the behavioral techniques. And just to let you know, that it's not as much of a touchy-feely book as it seems. So we'll be doing some reading through it. So there are some real techniques that you can learn through that and good examples. And it dovetails really well with Six Sigma, I think you'll find. We'll also be talking a lot about the core Six Sigma techniques, Lean Six Sigma techniques. So those are process thinking and tools and metrics around that. Lean tools and lean things come to mind for that. Brad, for this is just kind of to file away, we'll be covering some of the things at the end of the course that you're probably more familiar with than some of the others, like some optimization, linear programming. That's something that if you've done a green belt, you probably haven't heard of and you're probably not aware of. But we'll be covering some of that. We'll be covering queuing, for example, something that's not normally covered in a green belt class or in a basic lean tool class. We'll also be covering some of the team tools. Absolutely essential. A tool called Affinity Diagram, for example, which I'm sure a number of you are familiar with. Absolutely essential tool, great tool to have when you're working with the team. But we'll also be covering some of the more, what people consider to be the harder tools. I don't mean hard in that they're difficult, although they are difficult for some people. But these are tools that you can think of in terms of creating and analyzing data in a more meaningful way. So tools around the measurements and analytical methods. Finally, we'll be also covering, although not so much as we would in the Master Black Belt classes, the basic tools for evaluating things from a financial perspective. So we won't get deep into budgeting or forecasting or anything like that, but we'll need to be conversant in how to write a good business case. And yes, a good business case does include an estimate for the value of the project in terms of dollars, trying to put a dollar number on it, as well as at the end of the project, calculating out what people are going to get credit for in their budget. And without jumping the gun too much, just to mention that that's a two-step process. Before you run the project, to get buy-in to get the larger projects, sometimes you have to reach a little bit more into the business case, but that isn't what necessarily people are going to get credit for in their budget. So there's before you do it, and then there's after you've done it. And those are two different things. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about leading and managing change, less than we would in Master Black Belt class. But we'll certainly talk next lecture about obtaining and prioritizing the voice of the customer in an effective way. We'll talk about choosing good projects, some of that today and some of it at the end of the course. And we'll talk certainly about managing those projects. All of these things are going to be applied in a lot of different business processes. So we'll talk about processes from operations. We'll talk about processes for customer service, like from a call center, for example. We'll talk about processes from human resources, procurement, production, IT, the dreaded IT. We'll talk about that. We have to. Every modern black belt has to talk about IT, has to deal with IT in some way. So we'll talk through some of the things that come up. All right? And the most important is that you'll be able to apply this to your business processes. And I'll challenge you constantly to say, how does this apply in a situation that you've got? I mean, that's one of my, as a teacher, that's one of the things, and as a practicing black belt, that's one of the things I constantly challenge myself and others to do. And I have a structure that hopefully will allow you to do that fairly easily. Now, before we begin, and I heard, I think all of you fit in well to these assumptions. You all have a working knowledge of the quality tools, experience running some sort of projects that are improvement projects. Hopefully you're all familiar with Microsoft Office, in particular PowerPoint and Excel. Those two, you don't have to be an Excel expert, but if you know how to navigate in Excel, you know what a sheet is, you know what a workbook is, you have your sheets together, I guess is maybe what I should say, you're good then. Okay, and hopefully you have a laptop, or you could certainly use a desktop for this. A laptop would be better with the above program installed. You need to have Microsoft Office for sure. Okay, so the last thing I want to point out, and this is something that you're going to see throughout the course, is in your reading assignments, part of this is I'm going to ask you to cover the slides that we don't cover. And whenever you complete a section, I put this little sort of self-reflection journal. I call it a Lean Six Sigma journal for you to write down your reflections, your observations, your questions about what's important on this. And it's important that you fill these out. It's going to be part of your weekly assignment that you'll go through the slides and you'll actually generate these sorts of things. Okay? I just want to point that out because a number of people have said, when I've come back to them, they've said they found this very helpful to give them just a little bit of time to reflect on what they just saw. Okay, before we move on, I want to make sure that I want to ask, are there any questions that anybody has? What questions do you have?
I don't have any more.
Yes?
Oh, I just said I don't have any.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. I think we'll move on then. So what I'm going to do now is we'll take a little bit of time to see where we are in on today's lecture. So we'll take a little bit of time to set up the files and the accounts that are in here, and see if we can move, maybe beat the clock a little bit. So to do this, hopefully you've all had a chance to get onto the straight line account. If you haven't, that's okay. I'm going to just go through it right now. So let's start by simply going to our website, and you'll be able to download all of the stuff. So straightlineps.com is our website. It's also in my signature on the email, so you can just click on that. Okay. You all got an email saying that you were signed in on the course, or you were signed into our platform. So I know you all have access. If you click on sign in, like I'm doing right here, it'll take you to this, and you'll enter in your email address and your password. If you forgot, click on forgot. It'll email it to you. Okay, and when you get into the platform, you'll notice that it looks kind of like this. It looks like a Windows Explorer, essentially. You've got, on the left-hand side, you've got some folders. You've got some other tools here. More on that much later in the class. And you've got some folders. So I'm just going to take, this is all stuff that I've put in for helping me make decisions and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to spend any time right now with that, but I do want to show you how to find the files. So here's where I put the files. The files are located in public solutions. You don't have access to my solutions, but you have access to the public solutions. Executive Black Belt. So if you click on that, you'll see that these various files are put here. There's data for weeks 1 through 4. There's a DMAIC navigator. There are templates, tools, and there's Excel statistics. Okay? So I'm going to download just a couple of these. You need to download all of them, and we'll be using the templates and the tools as well. But I'm going to download Excel statistics. If you just click on the open, you can either download or simply open it. And it's a fairly big file. You can see it's counting up there. It's about 12 megabytes. So have a good connection when you download it. And I'm going to download the data too. I've already got it, but there, that was fast. Okay, and let's see, I'm going to download this too. I use Google Chrome, so Google Chrome gives you a lot of complaints loudly at you. And that's basically it. That's all you have to do, and then you should have the software. Now, once you've got the software on your computer, there's a tendency for people to do this, and I want to make sure that you don't do this. What some people want to do is they want to run Excel statistics right from the zip folder. We're not going to do that, and you need to unzip the following. So I happen to use either an RAR or a zip. You can use your Windows unzip. That should work just fine. So if you right-click, if you're in Windows, and click Extract All on Excel Statistics, we're just going to do that. So you can see it's really pretty well compacted. It was it's 76 megabytes to extract it. And I'll show you what's there. I just extracted it onto the desktop, right there. And I'm going to get rid of that now. And I'm going to extract my data too. And get rid of that. I'm getting rid of it on purpose so that I can't mess myself up. Okay, now basically I just want to walk you through a little bit of Excel statistics, and I think you'll see where I'm coming from, why once you get comfortable with this, it's going to be pretty easy to do the analysis that you're going to be asked to do. Not all of it, but the simple stuff, it's going to immensely help for the class. So let's take a look at that. If you take a look at what's in Excel statistics, all it really is, you can see here, is a bunch of Excel files with crazy names. Okay, so it turns out that if I click on one of these, it just brings up a strange file that has a bunch of statistics in it. You can see as I click around here that that's what it is. However, it also has a file. I'll put this on the list. It also has a file that's going to help you navigate around that. Now, if you have, I'm going to do this twice. If you have, if you're using Excel or Microsoft Office 2003 or before, you'll want to make a shortcut with Excel stats. So do the following. Create a shortcut. Move it to wherever is convenient for you. I'm moving mine to the desktop. Okay? And so if you click on that, it opens up Excel statistics. You'll see that there's not only this palette, but there's also on the menu all these different things. And it's going to help you do the analysis. Now, right now, it looks like a bunch of gibberish. One num, one cat, one num, one cat, two cat, two, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, it's making probably your brain numb. What we're going to find is that it's actually a nice structure. It's very simple. Okay. Second thing, if you've got 2007 or above, instead of, let's see, I think I already have that open. Yeah. Instead of doing Excel stats at XLS, you'll want to do the XLAM file. Okay. You'll want to make a shortcut out of that and move that to the desktop. Now, I happen to run Excel 2007 and Excel 2003 and all sorts of different types of Excel on mine, going way back because I have to deal with, believe it or not, some clients who are still on 97, increasingly less. But I'm going to open this up in Excel 2007. I'm going to show you what you're going to see if you open up Excel 2007. You're going to, first of all, you're going to see this thing that says Enable Macros. And you don't get the palette, but you do get an additional menu item, and when you click on that, it allows you to see all these different things, one num, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So for the moment, the only thing I want you to do is make sure that you download that, make sure you unzip. You've got to unzip both the data files and all the Excel stats and create a shortcut somewhere that's going to make it easy for you to open it up and shut it down. Okay? So those are the three things, and that's about it. Now, just briefly, I'm going to show you how this works, and you'll see that I'm going to get rid of my shortcuts. You see, I've already got my stars here. I changed the icons, but stars here actually refer to Excel stats. And I'm going to show you how it works. It works directly on the data. So this happens to be, for example, let's see, wait times at the DMV, my favorite place. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. Basically, if this happens to be something that is numbers, so and there's one column, so I don't know, I'm going to guess and use one num, and voila, there it is. See, it got the data in there, and it does all sorts of stuff, like it creates a histogram forming, and it creates a time series plot, and it does some summaries, and it does some tests. Then it the confidence interval. We're going to cover all of that stuff in classes coming up. But the main thing I wanted to show you was how easy it actually all is once you get all set up. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you. And hopefully this was a little bit helpful in terms of helping you understand what you need to do on the platform. If any of you have trouble getting Excel stats to work, what we'll do is there's no urgency to it because there's no Excel stats assignments coming up right away. But when we have our meeting, let's make sure that we cover that together and get it all set up so that you're not going to have trouble with it. But do try and do it yourself beforehand. Okay. So that's that in terms of what's on the platform and downloading all this stuff that you're going to need. Hopefully that was helpful to you, and you'll know how to navigate on the platform. There's lots of other things that are on here, but we are not going to cover them right now. So at this point, let's get back to the regularly scheduled program, and I'm going to go back to, let's walk through an introduction to Lean Six Sigma. We're going to move fairly quickly because all of you have experience in this, so this is going to be old news, I think, to you. Again, I want to reiterate at any point if you want to stop, please, and ask a question, please don't hesitate to do so. Okay, so we're going to pick back up on slide number 10, which is an introduction to Lean Six Sigma. And what I want to do is just briefly talk through what the program overview is here. And then I'll take a little more time on talking about how the whole thing works together, because there's a lot of moving parts. One of the things that you'll find as an improvement professional, and a number of you are really embarking on a real career in that, it seems to me, is that there's just a lot of things that you have to put together. And so we'll talk in sort of a general sense around some of those, and with some specificity as well. And then we'll talk through, I'm sure all of you are familiar with DMAIC. I'm just going to show you very quickly the pictures, and then we'll introduce you to one method of making sure that when we do our improvements that they link to strategy, called strategy maps. So that's what I'm hopefully we'll be able to cover today, and let's just kind of get to it. Now, one of the things that we'll want to do is I'm going to talk you through essentially in the program structure that we have. We talk a lot about Lean and Six Sigma, but we also talk a little bit about project management and team and change management. So in a very real way, those are the four sort of basic disciplines that you really need to be able to master if you're going to be a successful black belt. So I'll take a little bit of time explaining through some of these things just to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's not just a collection of improvement tools. In fact, many of the previous efforts at quality, if any of you were around through the TQM days, or even before that, the Deming days, in fact, Deming had to go to Japan for his stuff to be accepted. And there are various reasons for that, but the essential reason is that we're not Japan. America is not Japan. And we have a different history. We have our people have a different way of perhaps approaching the world historically. And things that worked in Japan didn't work here. Sometimes when we talk about some of the things that are important to people who are from East Asia and who are raised there, they have no clue what we're talking about because they do a lot of these things as a matter of course. For the early successful companies, particularly GE, they made the real leap of putting real structure on it, and that made all the difference. To have very definite projects that were put on to punctuate what the improvement was out, it makes a big difference other places as well. So the point is that it's not just a collection of tools. It's really a multidisciplined approach that includes, yes, the collection of tools through Lean and Six Sigma, but also project management and team management to make it go. The thing that binds all of this together, the way that I think about it, is the DMAIC process. So and we'll talk about what DMAIC is in just a bit, but that's essentially it. By using DMAIC and the tools and the structures of the project management, the team and change management, it helps us coordinate our continuous improvement so that we can get successful business results. Okay, I'm going to move very quickly to slide 16. We'll skip just a little bit, and let's just talk very quickly about some of these disciplines. I think we already know them, but I'm just going to say it just so that we get it sort of going in our brain. We talked a little bit about Lean. Lean, in a lot of ways, is the quickest way to eliminate some waste in your process. The emphasis is on time. So the two key words there are waste and time, right? Lean is very much a discipline that is about finding and eliminating waste. Okay, so that takes a different view than saying how can we make something that's core even better. So it's looking at it perhaps through a different perspective. I think if you're a technical Lean person, you probably don't see it that way, and that's fine. It's okay to think of it as a tool for positive enhancement. But I think in terms of most of its application, it really is in terms of eliminating waste. Six Sigma, on the other hand, is a collection of tools, and I'd like us to think of it as a collection of tools that help us eliminate either defects or variation, or reduce variation in the process. So not that there has to be a distinction between Lean and Six Sigma, there just tends to be one. The emphasis in Six Sigma is always on the scientific approach to things, using DMAIC. Very often the heavier lifting tools, things like regression, things like the statistical tools, tend to be associated with Six Sigma rather than Lean. Although, again, they don't have to be. Some of the more advanced Lean techniques are certainly, can be thought of as mathematical. Okay, and then I think we probably know what project management is, but again, let's just reiterate this. It's really a set of tools and techniques for planning, organizing, and monitoring an event, right? A one-time, we can think of it as more of a one-time application. Writing a book, that's project management, right? But if you're a company that publishes books, perhaps that book publishing is a process that you can look at. So sometimes those kind of can blend together, but a project management is something of definite duration. A project management is something of definite duration, team size, structure to it. It begins and it ends. Processes repeat in theory forever until the process is no longer needed. Of course, team and change management are tools and techniques and bodies of knowledge for helping you get buy-in from sponsors, keep the team on focus, get the most out of a team, etc. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to slide 18. I just want to give an example of Lean. I think all of us are familiar with it, so I'm going to go very quickly through it. An example I'd like to use is the shipping industry. It's thinking of it the opposite way, as I said before, and I think you'll see my point here. So years ago, in the late 50s and early 60s, the shipping industry was in big trouble, and one of the reasons why was they were just too expensive. I'm talking about the transatlantic shipping industry. They were too expensive, and they were too error-prone. The process was essentially this. If you're going to ship goods from, say, Britain to the United States, you'd first pick it from the goods from a warehouse in Britain. You'd put it on a loading dock. The goods would sit there. Then you'd load it onto the you'd load onto the ship. You'd ship it. You'd unload it at the loading dock or at the receiving dock in the U.S. It would sit there for a while. Then you'd put it on the trucks load it onto the trucks, and eventually ship it. So one way of thinking about this is not necessarily making the process better that you've got. When people were initially confronted with the problems of transatlantic shipping, they tried to use bigger and better ships, faster ships, bigger payload. I think for those of us who are with the lean principles, in some ways is the wrong answer, or can be the wrong answer. Instead, what they did was they invented a new way of doing it, which happened to be the shipping container, and they essentially eliminated a lot of the loading and reloading and sitting on the docks, right? So shipping container can be loaded directly at the warehouse into the shipping container, put on the truck, and then lifted right onto the ship and right onto the truck at the receiving dock. So it eliminates a lot of the sitting at the dock where all it really does is wait. It rots, it gets stolen, it becomes obsolete, and so forth. So in that way, they were able to reduce a lot of time as well as reduce a lot of errors. Okay? So lean example. You guys have there's tons of examples of lean in hospitals, tons of examples of lean in the office nowadays. So we won't go too much into that. I know it really applies. Okay. On the other hand, Six Sigma tends to be about reducing defects and variation, and let's talk through that just a little bit. So an example that I can give for this one is, suppose that there's a company that produces insurance claims. They may have too many incorrect claims. All these claims lead to all sorts of problems for the business, rework, customer complaints, appeals letters, so forth, a lot of work. So Six Sigma could be used to reduce, in this case, reduce defects. Here we're talking about defects. We would use the DMAIC process to, say, reduce it, say, from where it was before, 24% problem to 5% problem, or whatever. So that would be the idea there. Reducing defects tends to be more of a Six Sigma type of thing, where we're going to be searching for what constitutes a defect. Why did we get these defects? Not using the idea of flow, but rather data and decisions on why we made, why certain defects occurred in the first place. So, like I said, these can dovetail, but we'll put them more or less together. Okay. I think we already talked enough about project management. If it's okay with you guys, I'm going to go ahead and skip it. But again, just to keep in mind, it's a problem scheduled for solution. I like Joanne's answer for that one. Writing a book is one of them. Installing a new enterprise software solution is project management. Running a Six Sigma project is project management. But operating a warehouse is not a project. That's a process or a collection of processes. Okay. Emphasis again is on meeting timelines and deliverables. And again, team and change management. We talked a little bit about this. You know, just at a very high level, business, in order to succeed, it's a team sport, right? It requires, in order to get the most out of things, it requires collaboration and cooperation. I once saw a company leader get up, and a company quality executive, and this was in a company where the quality was a big thing for them, and so this was a top executive in the company. He got up at a meeting once and he talked to us about quality and his vision of it. And one of the things that he said was he hated sports analogies. And I asked him about it, and his answer was that, I said, why do you hate sports analogies? I use them all the time. I think people can get pumped up by me. He said, well, the thing I don't like about them is in sports, you're limited by the rules. Like in football, there's only so many men you can put on the team, or so many people you can put on the team. But succeeding at quality or succeeding at a particular thing in business is really more about knowing how to get everybody to pull in the same direction and getting the right people on the team doing the right thing. So if we can beat the other team by putting 15 people on the field instead of 11, that's okay. That's by the rules. That's all Okay. Just one very short comment. I'm sure all of you, this is almost getting to be such ancient history it doesn't matter anymore. But there used to be a real separation between Lean and Six Sigma. There were Six Sigma guys and Lean guys and believers in one and not the other. They've been shown to work together so well that I almost hate to even mention it. But there I've mentioned it, and now you know. Okay. So that's basically it. We've talked a little bit about the 4 disciplines. Now what I want to do is I want to move on to the structure, which is really how Six Sigma works. So before we go into this, I want to make sure that if you have any questions, we can talk about them. So if you have them, please don't hesitate to ask. I'll give it a few minutes for any questions like that. Okay. All right. Not surprised. Again, like I said, this is probably the most by the slide lecture that we're going to have. It's going to be, the rest of them are going to be much more participatory. So you're not going to get away with being able to sit like bumps on a log. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how Lean Six Sigma works. So it's one thing to talk about principles. It's another thing to talk about how it all fits together. What we're going to do is really kind of talk about how it all fits together, what are the different components that we need, and what are some of the key principles in each of them. Before we get going, I want us to think about two different quotes that always kind of ring true for me, and they kind of summarize to me in some ways Lean Six Sigma from 2 different points of view. And one of the things that we need to cultivate in ourselves if we're going to be really successful at this stuff. You may be already good at it, or you may not be. The first is a quote from Hung Po, a Chinese Zen master from a long, long time ago. And it's the foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think and not what they see. Now, that has, I won't say that's a tremendously deep thing, but it's extremely hard to do. And witness the number of the popularity of the news channels MSNBC and Fox. MSNBC and Fox, from 2 different points of view, all they really are trying to do is reinforce a particular worldview. I wouldn't say that's all they're trying to do, but that's certainly how they gain their popularity. If you really want your mind to explode, if they're close enough on the dial, you can watch one for 5 minutes and then switch to the other one, and then watch that for 5 minutes and keep flipping back until you're ready to, until your brain's ready to explode. And it's often good to actually get those 2 different points of view, and then maybe something that's not so driven by a worldview as opposed to, facts and so forth. But and not to pick on MSNBC and Fox News too much, because it's part of our makeup. We like to confirm things instead of challenge what we already know. If you want to be successful in Six Sigma and Lean, you've really got to look at the stuff that's obvious to everybody, and you've got to start asking the questions: is it really true? And that's what. And you know what? A lot of times the answer is going to be yes. Yes, it is true. But the times where it's no, are going to be the times where you're going to really make a big move. So it's really sort of a way of going into it. Another way of putting that, by one of my favorite writers, Mark Twain, is he said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." In other words, it's the stuff that you know is true that actually isn't true. That's the stuff that really gets you in trouble. And again, in my experience, there's so much of that that's borne true every day that I've ever done consulting. To give you an idea, just at the end of the year last year, I went into a company tangential to the health services industry, and looked at a number of their project process improvement projects. And in fact, the VP lady that I worked with was very, very cautionary and saying, well, there's not really much that we have to do. We run a pretty good ship here, and that's obviously something that you're going to be used to hearing if you aren't already. You're going to get used to hearing it. And having said that, with 2 days of observation, it was very clear to me that, among other things, their system was down for hours at a time, every day, affecting hundreds of people every day, who were then not able to take phone calls, who were then not able to acquire customers. Cost of that was just astounding. Now, they may have good uptime, they may have bad uptime, but the fact of the matter is it's costing a lot of money either way. So it behooves them to maybe look into it, getting it better. Those are the things that we need to really look at. The numbers that they had were at 99.99% uptime, and yet in 2 days of observation, they were down for many hours. It was clearly hurting them. All right. So let's talk through a little bit about what is Lean Six Sigma, why do we do it, why it can fail. Let's talk a little bit about why it can fail, and how we're going to get the best results. And I think that'll probably cover us through to the end of today. But before we go, what I want to do is, let me just kind of open this for discussion. Oops, there we go. Okay, what I'd like you to do is to take 30 seconds, just take 30 seconds, and I'd like us to brainstorm what you think, since you're all green belts and you have some experience, what are some principles of Lean Six Sigma? And to give you an idea, let's start out with one, just to give you an idea of what we're thinking about. So if you're going to use sort of like, guiding stars, right? Like one principle of taking a trip is to know where you're going, right? Know what your destination is, know where your destination is. So that must be a guiding principle. If you when in doubt, think about the direction that you're supposed to end up in, and that's going to help you go where you're going. So one of the principles that's really a guiding principle is focus on the customer. And in fact, customer value. Okay, so I want you to take 30 seconds and think of, see if you can write down and jot them down on a piece of paper next to you, or right on a slide. See if you can think of, say, 3 or so, and I'll give you 30 seconds to have a look. I should say, be prepared to share one with everybody. We'll write it on our board here. Okay. Okay, so let's start out. So let's maybe do it in reverse order. So let's maybe start with Shani. What's one of the principles that you wrote down? Okay, maybe Shani is not on the call anymore.
Problems. Remember, she said she had phone problems, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Sue, I guess I'm going to put you on the spot then. What's one of the principles that you thought of that could be on?
Data focused.
Ah, love it. Data focused. So I think I know what you mean by that, but what do you mean by that?
That you make decisions based on what the data is telling you instead of what your gut is telling you. I mean, your gut can guide you on what data you analyze, but it's ultimately the data that should tell the story and drive your projects.
Got it. Got it. Okay, excellent. Right. So, right, your gut, in fact, does need to guide you to a certain extent, right? But the data in and of themselves are not very valuable, but if they're put in the context of making a decision like that, the data can be used very powerfully to do that. And that's something that we're going to practice on. Excellent. So that's a great one. Okay. Let's see. Patrick, how about you?
I put true understanding of the actual processes going on. I guess it's kind of on the back of the data, but you know, not just what people have told you is happening, but what's really happening, and letting the data kind of back that up.
Got it. Okay, love it. So maybe one way that we could put that is, yeah, because it is with, there is the same idea of, hey, we need data, but it's a little bit different. Maybe we could say sort of, you need to observe the process. You need to observe the real process. Right, and in the example that I gave previously, I think probably the one reason why nobody thought that downtime was a problem is because they didn't have management coming in and looking at it. You know, and really sitting down with call center folks and side-jacking, as it was called. Sounds terrible, but that's what we did. We sat down there, and it was amazing how often we were just sitting there waiting because nothing could be done. But did I capture that more or less, the need to really observe the real process?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great one. In fact, in lean classes, they call it going to Gemba. I'm sure that in Japan they would laugh at me for that, but Gemba just means you only find the process when you're out of your office. Yeah, good, good. Okay, how about another one? Jim, can you help us out?
Need to know the customer's business better than they do. And that is a principle that we just put into place because the customer actually, they were in the business, but they didn't know the business. So we actually, and this is on the back end of data, so you know, we kind of immersed ourselves into their marketplace and really got a quick education, and were able to come back and supply the data they needed to answer their challenges. So,
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I often use is the as a consultant, and all of us are to a certain degree consultants, right? So when we go into a business unit, I think Jim, you were probably talking about a company, but whenever we go into a business unit, it's going to be run by people. And those people are going to have different ways of operating, right? But one of the ways that I often start when I go into a company is I spend a significant amount of time on their website trying to figure out how in the devil do they make money. and you know, I'll be darned, you know, some companies it's not so easy to understand how they actually do it. A company recently that I worked with, who's this, actually the company I worked with in December, was the question of what they do is they, among other things, they get Medicare patients extra reimbursements for their Medicaid. It varies by state. Like apparently Connecticut is a very friendly state, and some states are not. And the point is, they don't make any money from that customer. They, in fact, have to put you know, resources toward it. Well, how do they make money? Well, they contract with companies like Empire Health and Aetna and so forth, and it's a retention play. So their whole way of making money is to help their clients retain their customers. So that's how they do it. So then when I went in and did the observation, it's really about how can I see how what they're doing is not just burning expenses, but is keeping them from creating value for the people that pay them and expanding that base as well. And you know, a number of different things are like that. All right, so that's a great one. I love it. Okay, Brad, how about you? Do you have one to add?
Yeah, sure do. I think you have to look at the whole value stream. A lot of times you'll get called in to look at a particular process or a particular problem, and really you need to go either upstream or downstream.
Yes. Yes. And you know, I think that's a great thing to bring up. You know, one of the things in moving from a green belt to a black belt is spending a larger time making sure that you're solving the right problem. Because as a green belt, a lot of times people have gotten away with, let's do a small contained project. It's within a single vice president or AVP's or purview or sphere of influence. And it's done that way because it's easier. The hard stuff is to go intra-department and saying, you know, why are we not in line? But for those of us who have done this sort of thing, we find all sorts of crazy things like specific, say, printing out of something, printing out of an Excel spreadsheet, handing the next department the printouts, and what they do with the printouts is they enter them on their own Excel spreadsheet, you know, all sorts of things like that, as well as, you know, handoffs that don't make any sense. That's a great way to kind of lose the focus on the customer value. Absolutely. That's a great one. Okay. Shani, are you back?
I am back. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have one to add?
Yeah, the one that I'd like to add is that it's team-based. It's focusing, allowing the business areas to be a part of the process in brainstorming and coming up with the improvement initiatives and the decisions about their own process.
Excellent. Okay, so you're right. I mean, in order to make this stuff really work, you've got to have everybody playing, right? You can't just tell them what to do because, surprise, people don't do what you tell them. So getting them to make the decisions themselves is often very helpful. So we'll find that when you do the analysis, a lot of times you've got to go back to the SMEs and say, here's what I'm finding. Does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense, let's talk through why it could be that we're seeing this. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it actually is true. And when you dig a little bit deeper, it does make sense, but it's not common sense. So good. I'm going to add one more to our list, and it's at the bottom. But I think there's a good list to start, and that is, I'll say, the search for cause and effect. So yes, we want results in business, but we want to know why we got those results, so that we can repeat them and that we can improve them. Okay? If you just know that something works, that's not necessarily good. That's not necessarily good enough. I mean, consider if you went to the doctor and you had a problem with your knee, and the doctor prescribed you an anti-inflammatory. It said stay off it for 3 weeks, and said, you know, take a warm bath. And you came back in a week and you said, Doc, you don't know how much you've helped me. And that would be right. He wouldn't know how much, or he wouldn't know how he did it. So, you know, the key is to kind of ask that question, why? Right? So we don't just want to know how. We also want to know why. So I'm going to add that to this one. And there's a few places where I've actually got answers in here, and that's all fine and dandy. But let's see if I can get back on my. Not liking it now. There we go. Had something hung up. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Something hung up. Okay. So let's move forward a little bit. I'm going to move to, and these are all in your binder. I'm going to move to, here we talked about some of these key values. I think we pretty much captured them and more. Create value for our customers, manage data, fact-driven, search for cause and effect, minimize waste, increase quality simultaneously, foster collaboration, plus there were some additional ones I think that you found out. found as well. I love that end-to-end. Make sure that you're looking at the entire value stream. I love the idea of you've got to go to the Gemba. You've got to go to the process to really understand what's going on. Those are key principles, absolutely. One thing that we need to keep in mind is that, and I think both Patrick and Brad captured this, and that is that these techniques are all geared toward looking at business through what's called a process lens. Things happen in terms of a process. They have a beginning, they have an end, they repeat, there are steps that are done. Just want to talk a little bit about what that means in terms of process thinking. There's two diagrams. There's a diagram that we're going to see time and time and time again. Those of you who have ever taken a classroom know this to be a fact. I'm going to ask you to draw the box about a zillion times and label what's an output, what's an input, what's my results, and what's my explanatory variables. That's a very helpful, if you're an engineer, you're familiar with the old black box, right? What comes out, what goes in. That's what I'm talking about. So the picture at the top is a picture I want you to burn into your brain. A process is something that sandwiches inputs and outputs. Okay? It's the things that we do in order to make an output given certain inputs. Okay? Mathematically, and this is the other way that we're going to think about it when we do the techniques and tools. And don't ask me why. I guess this is just shows. I guess this is, exactly shows why mathematicians are always thinking backwards. We think about it backwards. Most people read from left to right. Right? Inputs precede the process, and then you get the output. I guess mathematicians think the other way. They're always trying to predict things. But anyway, we'll call the outputs Y's or big Y's sometimes. The inputs X's, and the process is that function that puts it all together, right? So what we get is a function of what we do and what we need to get it, what we need to do it. So results are a function of what we do and what we need in order to do what we do. Okay? So that's the Y equals F of X notation that we're going to be talking about. In a nutshell, that's it. Okay? So when I write up the equations later, for those of you who are a little bit equation phobic, realize all I'm really doing is writing notation that says, yeah, what I get, what my output is a function of these inputs and a process. That's all it really means. Okay? And mathematics is a language that puts that into context. Okay, so let's go through a little thought experiment, if we could. Let's come back to here. Okay, so let's suppose that you had there were two coins, and you were given a bet. Okay, you got to bet on one of the coins. The idea was that if you got ahead, then and you predicted the right coin, then you'd get $100,000. If you didn't, if you picked a coin and said I want to go with coin number 1, and coin number 1 came up as tails, you get 0. Okay, or if you went with coin number 2 and you picked that, it came up tails, you get 0. If it came up heads, you get $100,000. Now, here's the thought experiment for why we care about the process, right? So suppose that in this situation you were given the information, say either collecting data previously or something, that there was a 60% chance that coin number 1 came up as a head, and there was only a 40% chance that coin number 2 came up as a head. Well, this isn't rocket science or anything like that, but the question would be, well, what coin would you choose to bet on? I think every one of us would say, I'm going to bet on number 1. Hey, I have a question to everybody. Did I just lose the audio or the visual?
It just blinked, came back on.
Okay, it blinked and it came back on. Okay, yeah, some strange things on this side. Okay, we'll come back to it. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so which one would you pick? Well, obviously you're going to pick coin number 1, right? Because it has a 60% chance of coming up as a heads or a 40% chance of tails. It's like voting. It's like saying, should I pick the I have to be careful about this because the baseball teams that's a big deal. But it's like betting on the Yankees versus betting on the Washington Senators, right? Of course you're going to bet on the Yankees. Okay. Now let's take a look and let's mentally flip the coins. So now I'm going to mentally flip the coins, and look what happened. We flipped both the coins, and coin number 1 came up a tail. Coin number 2 came up a head. So we didn't win any money. And you know what? If we would have bet on coin number 2, we would have made $100,000. Now the question is, did we make a bad decision? The answer, and if we would rate our decisions on a 1 to 5 scale, now I'm not going to ask everybody to do that, but you can kind of mentally do that if you want to. And let's see if we're all where we should be. So if you're in line with Six Sigma and our line of thinking, if you chose coin number 1, you should rate your decision as a 5. You made the best possible decision given what you knew at the time. We can't give information based on future, so we just don't know. The point of all this, right, the point of all this is not to say that we should go out and embark on a career of predicting heads or tails. The point of all this is it's not enough just to know about results. If we don't know why we got results or whether we could get better results doing something else, then that may or may not be helpful to us. Okay? So, hopefully this example kind of, hopefully it's not too esoteric to think about, it makes sense to be looking at this. Okay. And because we work with processes, I'm now on slide 35. Because we work with processes, and a key component of a process is that it repeats. Many processes, they repeat hundreds of thousands or millions of times in a year. Because of that, we are more interested in not single-time events, but staying with the baseball analogy, we're concerned about raising our batting average, right? So because of that, it's helpful to know some of the tools of statistics and probability along with when we're looking at our data. It does matter. The process does matter. In a lot of cases, in a lot of places, we play a game with inches, and if we can improve something 5 or 10%, that can mean millions or tens of millions of dollars. All right, so I'm preaching to the choir at this point, but it's because processes repeat that it gives us this advantage of making incremental improvements. Now, it's not the only way to do it, but it is one way of doing it. Results aren't the only things that matter. Both things matter. I want to talk a little bit about what's the distinction between Lean and Six Sigma, and give you a few thoughts for how you might choose one or the other. In Lean Six Sigma, we want to be able to deliver. Nowadays, it's not good enough to just be high quality or to just be fast. You need to be both, and there's more to it than that. But if you want to be both fast and high quality, you have to use the principles of Lean Six Sigma, of both of them, not just the quality principles, but the principles on Lean about doing things fast and quickly. So one thing that I've often used that I find powerful is to think of any problems that exist. If somebody says, I've got a problem with this particular business area, we can sometimes think of them in 3 different categories. We can say, this particular business area has a problem with delays. Okay, that's one way that we can kind of articulate it and make our vision kind of come to fruition, is to say, the problem with this particular area of the business is there's a lot of delays. We're not delivering things on time. That's causing all sorts of problems. So delays can be a major thing. Second thing is we can think of a process as creating lots of defects. Okay? So the second way of thinking about it is it doesn't work properly. It produces something that isn't right, and we call that a defect. So, and the third thing, the third way that we can think of its problems is it varies too much. Whenever we run this particular, whatever happens in this business unit, all bets are off. It's a crapshoot. One day I can get good results, the next day I can get bad results. and that's the problem. Now, I'm oversimplifying this, but any one of those things can usually be articulated into a problem, and the one that works the best is the one that works the best for your sponsors and gets your team motivated the most. So that's just background on this. Let me give you a more concrete example. One of the projects I worked on last year was reducing errors. I'll just call it this way. Reducing it was problems in a warehouse, and this was a food wholesaler. And in a nutshell, what they do is they store food, and then when a company like Stop and Shop or Kroger orders from them, they put it on a truck and they send it to a store, right? The proper store, and they need to make sure they have the right things at the right time. That's basically it. So one way of looking at it would be, are they delivering these things on time? Are they delivering the right product at the right time? And there I might look at, oh, we have a problem with delays. I might articulate the problem in terms of the time that it takes us to get a correct shipment together. That may be the right way to formulate it. Second thing is, so that might be right. Another way of doing it might be, if I look in the process, I might find that, oh, you know what? A lot of times they're simply putting the wrong things on the trucks, and instead of formulating it as delays, maybe it makes sense to look at this in terms of errors. You know what? If we can reduce the omitted items, or the overs or shorts, as they're called, over shorts and damages and mispicks in the trade, they call them that. If we can eliminate all those errors or all those defects, you got to be careful about how you language this, because nobody makes errors, of course. But if you eliminate the defects, that might be the right quality story to tell, and that might energize the team.
Yeah. Hey, Mark.
Yes.
I think you can make a point here where a lot of businesses, you may ask them how their business is doing, and they'll tell you their process is right on. And this is the difference between a 3 Sigma and a 6 Sigma process. So a lot of clients that we speak with, they think their problem, they think they don't have a problem, when actually they have a lot of challenges. So
right.
it comes in the areas like, well, we used to make money doing this, and now all of a sudden we're not making any money, and we're doing everything the same. So what changed? The answer is your process was never that good to begin with. Everything just tightened up.
Yeah, sometimes that is the answer. And again, kind of going back to Patrick's example or principle of saying you need to actually go and look at it, and yours about really understanding how we make money, right? How this particular business makes money, what their business really is, and what's really true customer value. A lot of time that helps. What I was going to say is, when you're thinking about it tactically, once you've already noticed that there's a problem that's really costing money, you can motivate people in 3 different project paradigms of what the problem are. One is there's lots of defects, one is there's lots of delays, and one is there's lots of variation. Sometimes that really gets people and says, you know what, we just don't have a consistent process. Every time we do something, we don't know what we're going to get. It's unpredictable. A lot of managers really respond to that and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. That is true, and wouldn't my life be a lot better if, right? So that's kind of the thing that you want to be able to. The reason why I spent a little bit of extra time on this is because those 3 formulations, I think, are often particularly powerful. To say, one way or another, creating that story that says, you know what, your process has a problem with defects, or your process has a problem with delays, or your process has a problem with too much variation. Sometimes, very often, those will work. Those stories will work, and it varies which one works. But what I was trying to demonstrate was that, given a specific situation, you can use any one of these, whatever one works the best. That's going to guide how you go through a project, and the choices that you make in terms of metrics and all sorts of things that we'll talk about coming up. Okay, thank you for the questions and comments. It's very helpful. To give you just a very high-level view, if it tends to be something that is defects and variation or improving quality, we're going to tend to use the Six Sigma paradigm. If it tends to be about removing delays and waste and touch points, improving the flow, or do it quickly, that tends to be lean. So again, quality and yield, Six Sigma, delivery and speed, lean. Okay. I'm going to quickly look at my time. We've got about a half hour left today. I'm going to move a little bit more quickly so that we can get to some of the, one of the things particularly at the end that I wanted to cover. Let's see. Okay. Let's just quickly talk about why we're going to do it. Well, if people are going to ask you about this and you get pushback, one reason that, or one method that some people like to use to say this, well, there's a lot of other people who are doing it. It's not very compelling to me, but it's compelling to a lot of people. There are people who, there are companies like GE and Allied Signal and Toyota who have done this and are famous for it. And there are other adopters like Bank of America, Dell, Fidelity. Ford Motor Company is one that has recently taken this on full force and has, among other things, avoided the bankruptcy. So it's been shown to work in other companies. Also, there's a lot of benefits to it. Yes, better margins, right? Your expense line is going to go down, but also because of the focus on customers, there's better customer satisfaction and loyalty. There's a more learning-based culture because we're constantly asking the question why. It's hard to do this. As Jim just pointed out, a lot of companies think, and I think it's a natural thing to think, hey, we do things well, we do things right, we do things better than other people. We can't really improve all that much. It's hard to get people to start looking in the mirror and say, you know what, I really could lose a few pounds, or maybe I ought to lay off the Easter eggs or something like that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip this, but actually I'm going to cover it very quickly. Lean Six Sigma should help you move from reacting all the time to more prevention. And we'll talk a lot more about this in the states of a process when we talk about control charts and process control. But suffice it to say that so much of what we do every day is capacity that's lost, working on things that we shouldn't be working on, that we don't need to be working on, reacting to things that are really chasing ghosts. Particularly in operations, we're already thin. We need to use the people that we have in the best possible way. A lot of the techniques that we have are going to help us do that. Okay. I'm not going to denigrate the slides here, but I'm going to go ahead and skip to 45. So hopefully there's enough of a motivation there. Other people are doing it. There's lots of business advantages that can be created from customer loyalty to better margins, and it's going to help us stop reacting to things. It's going to help us make us more a thoughtful organization. The reason I mentioned that third one is I never met a company that didn't come out and tell me. I should say, I won't say I never did, but almost every company I've ever done consulting at, when you talk to people and ask them about their culture, they all say, oh my God, you wouldn't believe how many we're just constantly doing firefighting. But, that's our culture. Jim knows Corning. I used to work at Corning for a while. That was one of the first things that my supervisor told me, if you're going to work at Corning, you got to get used to firefighting, because that's what we do. We do that so much more than every other company. Guess what? They didn't. They did it about as much as every other company. It certainly was a problem, but there's lots of companies in that same problem. So there's lots of management who will respond to that. Oh, we can just, fight less fires. That would be very helpful. I want to talk a little bit about why it can fail, just a little bit, and I think you'll have your own opinions on this. Here's a few quotes I just want to share with you. I love that first one. Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Thomas Edison said that. He also said what? Innovation or genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, which kind of means the same thing. A slightly different aspect of this is, so what I want to say is, it's all work. It's not magic, right? You actually have to go and look at the process to understand what's going on, as Patrick said, or you actually have to force people to look at the whole value stream, as Brad said, or you have to get the team involved, as Shannon said, and you have to agree that when the data says something that doesn't jive with your beliefs, you have to accept that. If the data are good, if the data are credible, you have to accept that, as Sue said. And that's a very difficult thing. But anyway, here are some reasons. One is that it's a lot of work to do this. It's hard to do. It's hard mentally, and it can be hard physically, challenging physically as well. Another reason, and it's kind of spelled out by Churchill thing there, is perfection is spelled P-A-R-A-L-Y-S-I-S. I love that one. And really what he's saying is you have to strike this balance between a process that's improved and better and something that's going to be perfect, right? So we all want to aspire to be perfect, but we all know that none of us are. We're all mortals. All of our processes are run by people who are also mortals, and we make mistakes, okay? We can make them better, absolutely. But let's not let getting it perfect get in the way of actually getting better. I want to be careful about saying that because some things really are worth spending a little bit of extra time to get perfect. But you've got to weigh that very, very well. And finally, one of the sayings I put unknown, but I think I was the one who originally said it. If you only have one bite at the apple, if you're trying to eat a whole apple at one time, you often choke. So that whole balance between providing all the solutions and providing a good set of the solutions is often what kills projects and keeps people from moving forward. So those are some of the things that we need to think about as we go through. I'm not going to talk a lot about this right now. We'll talk about it in the future, but I think we'll all agree. I'd like us to take just a brief look at slide 48. I'm going to read it through. Some key pitfalls are really in communication and commitment. So we'll have sponsors that aren't really committed to a project. They're giving it lip service, but they don't really need it to finish. That's to Jim's point about making sure that it's important enough to do. Often communication doesn't go there. It's either one way or it's no way communication. And often there's a failure to support or reward behaviors that are necessary. If you're asking why and somebody's constantly punishing you for asking why, that's a problem. You either need to learn to ask why in a different way, or there needs to be some coming of understanding that, no, it's our job to really understand why things happen. Not just to accept the status quo, but to really question why we're doing things, because otherwise we'll never get any better. We'll keep doing it the same way. Their execution and implementation, that gets to the stress and overalls. You can read this through as well. And then there's an approach, too. Some Six Sigma programs fail because they only focus on cost reduction. If you only focus on cost reduction, I can tell you what the best cost reduction procedures are. Close your business. Shut the doors, turn out the lights, send everybody home. That's the best way to save expenses. Sell the business. I don't think any of us wants to do that, and Bill Gates didn't get to, and Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett didn't get to be where they are by selling everything and by closing everything and just worrying about expenses. Expenses are important, they're not the only part. Okay? All right. I'm going to go, again, very quickly through some of the key things in the structure that are here. Primarily, I just want to talk very briefly about how do you get the best results, what are some of the keys that you have to have in there. We'll talk through that. I'm going to skip ahead to I'm going to skip ahead to slide 51. A lot of people have studied this, and one way to think about it is, in order for this to work, you have to have 3 different areas. So if you're formulating your Lean Six Sigma program, Baptist, Heather is working on this. At Connecticut, Robin is doing what she's doing, and so forth. There needs to be a 3-pronged approach. The first is to attack this from a measurements point of view. You need to have evaluations of your program and the business that starts looking at measurable results, tangible things. Now, measurements are never going to be 100%, ever. Okay, so don't think that measurements will tell the whole story, but it's going to tell some story. And the better the measurements can be, they're going to be more customer focused. NPS project, that's a great project because one of the things is they're focusing on the Net Promoter Score, which is a customer-focused metric. One of the goals at a health insurance company is to grow membership. That's their customer base. If by improving NPS, there's an assumption there that they will be able to also improve their membership in terms of not only the sheer numbers, but their retention as well, and their loyalty, their lifetime value. And NPS is a very tangible thing that you can get from that. It's essentially how many people would recommend your company to others. Essentially, that's what it's getting at. Okay? Second thing is the infrastructure, which means that there has to be some structure to the projects that you run in order for that to work, and I'll talk through that briefly. And the third is behavior and culture. Not going to talk much about that, but we'll move through it. So measurements, I think we've already talked about that. The main thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm slipping ahead to slide 54, is that a good measurement system should have customer-focused metrics, that is, metrics that matter to the customer and the business, and that also it needs to distinguish between noise and signal. So it's not going to be helpful if it's having us fight more fires by running around like chickens with our heads cut off. If one day we're saying, hey, sales are up, do something. Oh, that's good. Let's have a pizza party. Nope, the next day sales are down. Let's do something. And if it just creates a loss of capacity by doing something, whatever that something is, it doesn't really lead to sustained improvement, then our measurement system is failing us. Okay, so customer focused, business focused, and distinguishes between signal and noise. I could have all sorts of things in there like visual and so forth. One of the things that we'll notice, and Brad mentioned this earlier, is that very often the metrics that we do have are focused within what we call within silos. So we'll have maybe product development or marketing metrics or sales metrics or compliance metrics, whatever. But most processes that touch the customer go across all those things. So it's important to understand, for example, if you're, let me use that example of the warehouse again. If you're delivering trucks full of goods to a grocery store, and your problem is you're not delivering them on time, it doesn't matter. Well, it's not 100% secure that you're getting the billing right. Just because you're getting the billing right doesn't mean that everything's okay in the billing cycle. It's a team. Again, it's a team game. So metrics that look all the way end to end are going to be more helpful. Easier said than done. Anybody who's tried this knows that. Okay. Again, like I said, this is mom and apple pie stuff, but sometimes just saying it is there. Now let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure. I'm just going to show the picture. Okay, so let's go to slide 57. And I've got a program structure infrastructure and a project infrastructure. This happens to be for the program. So if you're building a program from the ground up, and by the way, all of this can vary, but here's sort of the standard structure. In the standard structure of Six Sigma, you've got some steering committee that provides, usually the executive steering committee, which provides portfolio management. And that is, make sure that the entire portfolio of projects lines up with strategy. So for example, if you are in a strategic track that says one of the things that you need to do is to be a company that's easy to do business with, that might be, you might look at the set of projects that are geared toward doing that. Like, for example, simplification of processes, reduction of process steps, things like that might be a project that would line up with simplifying business. As with getting things right the first time. So something that would increase the yield, or the first pass yield on something would be potentially a strategic project. If you're talking about growing membership or growing your customer base, that might not be a highly strategic project. Then there's the tactical side of things, like from a specific project, I might have 3 processes where I'm trying to improve the yield. Some may be better than others, and so there's selections based on not just on the business value, but on the political situation. Do I have the right personnel? Do I have the right stakeholders, and so forth? These both lead to executing on specific projects. And these projects can be Kaizen projects, which are usually short events but often have big scope. DMAIC projects, which is going to be the heart of what we learn, and even sometimes design projects. We're not going to cover too much of design. What we're going to be geared with mostly is DMAIC projects, although we'll touch upon Kaizen projects. Black belts and green belts usually run these with the support of a champion and the sponsor and a master black belt. The champion usually provides political support. So if they're usually somebody who holds clout in an organization, the master black belt generally, but not always, provides technical support. And then often there's training that goes along with running particular first projects. Okay. So that's the program structure, and you can read more about it on the slides that come. Here's the project team structure, and I'm on slide 58. On any specific team and project, there's typically here's the core team, which is usually run by a black belt or green belt, and then there are team members. In a green belt, in a black belt project, very often those team members are green belts. Not always, but very often they are. Sometimes they're yellow belts. Sometimes they're just plain old team members. And then there's direct support from sponsors and executive leadership. And there's sort of dotted line support in the same way with champion and master black belt. Finally, there can be extended team members, SMEs as required, and there can be technical support from finance, IT, HR, things like that. Very often if you, like let's say, for example, the project, in order to implement the fixes, requires a small IT implementation, then that would be part of the project where you need support there. If it maybe requires a legal form or something like that, you might need compliance to help. They might not be a core team function. You want to keep the core team, generally speaking, to anywhere from 3 to, I would say, 7 or 8 people. When it gets to be 10, it's really unwieldy for these teams and tends to really drag the projects on. You can have extended team members, but a core team, 3 to 8, I'd say. Okay. I'm going to skip through this, but do have it as your reading assignment. We're going to cover some of these things. So the roles of steering committees and executive sponsors, champion, and belts. okay, from master black belt to yellow belt team members. And by the way, the pyramid is not meant to say that one is better on the hierarchy. Everybody's important, right? It's supposed to illustrate sort of the numbers. So there are more team members than there are green belts, and there are more green belts than there are black belts, and there are more black belts than there are master black belts. And that's just from a practical point of view. Okay. All right. I want to make you aware of some of these project methodologies. We talked about improvement and design. Process management could be also thought of as Kaizen, or just do it. Sometimes people call them. Let's talk through just a little bit on that. I'm going to move to the slide on 64. Here's a little process flow diagram that can help us determine whether or not we want to run a project, or whether a project makes some sense. I'm just going to walk through it pretty quickly. One of the things that we want to do is right up front ask, do we already know the solution? If we do, it doesn't make sense to define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Let's just fix it. So that's the first thing. If we don't know the solution, then we'll want to ask if it's new. If we don't yet have a product or a process, we might want to design it. That leads us to DMADV, which is a design process. On the other hand, if the answers to both those questions are no, it could very well mean that we're looking at an improvement project, and that's the heart of what we're going to be doing. So the first question would be, are we going to improve turnaround time or improve quality? If we're going to reduce turnaround time, we're probably going to be looking at lean, to make lean. If it's not defect-driven. If it's an improved quality, we're probably going to be using DMAIC with a Six Sigma emphasis. Again, this is just a guideline. It's very similar to what we talked through before: defects, delays, and variation. And there are formal ways of selecting this as well. Here are some aspects of really good projects. There are resources available and committed, reasonable scope, good chance of success, a gap between desired and current performance, the cause of the problem is not apparent, and it's existed for a while. Process cycles enough for data collection. That's sometimes a problem when people do projects related to project management. They don't cycle, or product development. They don't cycle quick enough to get the high-level metrics. So you've got to use other metrics to be able to measure that. This doesn't mean that you can't do the projects. It just means that you have to think a little bit harder about the metrics that you use. It isn't a solution that's going to require heavy IT involvement. That can vary in terms of the area and the support that you get from IT. Financial opportunity is clear, well-aligned to strategy, and it's important to the customer. Now, I want to note that not all of the above criteria have to be met for every single project, but everyone that does, it's helpful if it is, and if it doesn't meet these criteria, it should be a bit of a flag that you need to address, either with the sponsor or champion, something like that. Okay, here's some more stuff on what the project funnel would look like, and this comes from PISDEC. Projects that failed didn't have sponsored ID and commitment, didn't have clear benefits to the customer, shareholder, employee, didn't have available resources, were not scoped properly, etc. Okay. All right. We've talked a little bit about the rules, and let's see. I wanted to also mention that any program should also select people in a similar sort of way. So I have certainly had discussions prior with a number of different people, including Heather and Robin, about what people might or might not be appropriate for certain things and why. Here are some of the things that I use or that I put out to say, you know, let's evaluate whether these people are right to do Six Sigma, green belt, or black belt, or master black belt, or what have you, or even if I'm not on a team. Okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. All right. and there's a little bit on education and mentoring and portfolio management. I'm not going to go through that, but obviously that's part of the structure. Very similar in terms of selection criteria and so forth. Okay. Okay. I do want to mention just a couple of things on culture before we move on, and we'll stop for the day and talk a little bit about the assignment. But if the first culture and moving the needle on things, it's so important to get the culture behind, and it's painstakingly slow for those of you who have done it. And the way to think about this is do it for your project and pick your battles well. Sometimes projects just don't work, even with support that seems to be there. It just doesn't work, and it's not the right timing. We should have the gumption and the foresight to say to evaluate that appropriately. And I'll give you the tools. We'll talk about this either beginning of next week or this week. I believe this Friday we're going to talk about something called DCOM, which is a tool to help us evaluate a project as it's going through. But what we really want is an end state where we have a culture of thoughtful action and learning, and this doesn't happen overnight because humans aren't built that way. A culture in which we manage change rather than we just force people into it, and that the changes occur in a systematic way, but that becomes organic. And finally, where a culture where asking why is not punished, right? Jack Welch called this boundarylessness, and he had a lisp. I don't know if you knew that, but Jack Welch had a lisp. And when he first drove out this idea of what he called boundarylessness, everybody thought he was stuttering. But what he really meant was that a culture where it's open. If you make mistakes, that's okay, but we need to be able to understand where the handoffs are and where those problems can occur and do occur, so we can start to stamp them out. Much to Brad's point. Here's some stuff on what some of the key behaviors to promote. Again, I'm going to ask you to be reading through this, so you'll have some time to look it over and ask questions. I think at this point we will stop now, and I guess I will open some things to questions, but we'll get right into the assignment and what you'll be expected of over the next week in just a minute. So what we didn't cover today was DMAIC, which I think you're already comfortable with. Pretty much everybody is, so I'm fine with that. And the last part that we didn't cover that I was hoping that we would is it begins on slide 105, and it's on something called strategy maps. I'm going to ask you to read that over, but you can Google it if you want. If you've heard of the balanced scorecard, it's the same guys who developed the balanced scorecard developed strategy maps. And what it really is it's a picture of a balanced scorecard. I'm just going to show you one. This is an example of this is what it looks like in theory, and then this is what it looks like in practice. I think you'll like what it looks like in practice. Here's what it looks like in practice. This is one for a sales team where you can see that they've got projects that are aligned all the way up with. It connects with what's called intangible capital, which would be like your technology, like the value that you've got stored in the knowledge of employees, like the value that you've got stored in your knowledge of how the company operates, right? That investment that you make in order to say, this is Kinetic here, and this is what we care about, or this is what Baptist Health Systems is all about, or the investment that you've done, Jim, in terms of creating that. Here's what Sterling Innovation want you to give it a shot in terms of connecting your work to that. And before we lay off of it, I just want to show you. Lots of people have used it. So here's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I thought that they always got their man, but I guess not. So they needed this to help them. I don't think they really used it out on the slope. All right. Okay. So I'll stop as I bring up the assignment and walk through what it is this first time. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So what questions do you have? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and, seeing that we are at the assignment, so each of you is going to get one of these PowerPoint slides or one of these PowerPoint decks. And the idea is you just fill out the assignments right in the PowerPoint deck. You might have to add a page if you need to. That's okay. You might have to make real small print. That's okay, too. It doesn't bother me. But as we continue, the first time it's just going to be words. But as we continue, there's going to be pictures and diagrams and stuff from Minitab that you're going to want to put in. There's instructions that are on the top. Fill it out and mail it back to me. Here's the assignments. So the assignments are essentially, I want you to read through all the course slides for week 1, and this is due next Tuesday. And this is going to be for every week. You're going to read through what we don't cover, what we do cover. If you're taking notes, then obviously you don't have to go back on those anymore. There's going to be reading from Bringing Out the Best of People, Table of Contents, Preface, chapters 1, 2, 3. It's a very short reading. It's only 22 pages that's assigned, and also an article in which I'll be giving to you called "More Is Not Always Better" by Christine Anderson Cook, and that's going to be maybe a bit of a challenge for some of you. It has some mathematical notation. I want you to give it a shot. Okay, don't suffer, but I want you to give it a shot and see if you can follow it through to her conclusions in order to evaluate whether her conclusions are valid. There's also exercises, and for this time, most of these exercises you'll see are actually in the body of the slides that you've got. So I've included them here, but they're also in the body, so you'll know sort of what section to look for. And then there's an assigned discussion. So let me just kind of go through this very quickly. For the course slides, read them through, complete all entries for your Lean Six Sigma journal. You just need to do that. You don't need to put anything in here in terms of output. In Bringing Out the Best of People, you want to read these chapters and answer these and provide these responses. Wherever it says your response, you're expected to make a response. More is not always better. The article is attached right into the body of the PowerPoint, which you can access just by double-clicking on it and opening it. Okay? So showed you that once, pretty straightforward, I think. Like I said, do your best on interpreting this. And okay, and then the exercises literally are just these exercises that are in the binder, and for each of them I tell you where they are. So this one happens to be from week 1, slide number 24. This one happens to be from week 1, slide 103, and so forth. Okay? There's 7 of them. You should expect them typically to take half hour or less. For many of them, it'll be less than that. Okay? And let me just finish this up. The last part of this, and when I send this out to you, you'll also get a Excel spreadsheet with everyone's contact information. I'm holding off at that because there was one person who dropped out just this morning, and 3 people who signed up, or 3 or 4 people who don't know yet, who signed up who will be joining us as the week goes on. But part of this is to be contacting another member of the class and talk about some of your work. Okay, so that's that. That's what you're going to be getting. All right, so I'm going to at this point just about sign off. I think we're 5 minutes over the top of the hour. We started a little bit late, so I do apologize for doing that. Looks like we lost Sue. But I just would mention that if you do have a webcam, it's not you're not forced to have it. But if you do have a webcam, it can be helpful just to see that we're real people, but let's see if it's on there. It is. Hopefully you can see. This is me, by the way. If you've never seen me before, I usually wear glasses, but they're too much glare. So if you do have a webcam, we can do this at the end when we talk through the assignments. I think it's too much of a distraction to have during the lectures, but as we do during the assignments, I think it'd be fine. Okay? So thanks for attending today. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you all on Friday. If you have questions in the meantime, you have my email, you have my phone number. You can call or email me anytime, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So that's it. So we'll see you on Friday. Get started on the assignment as early as you can because there's a lot of parts to it. Okay?
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Would you go back to your website real quick and walk through how you got into the documents? I hadn't had a chance to.
Yeah. Happy to do it. I'm going to take my face off though.
That's okay.
I'm sure it is. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to the website, okay, you click on the sign in button right up on the upper right.
Right.
Right there. You'll enter your email address and the password. I think it was probably BP April or something like that.
I don't think he sent it out, but if you can just get it reset by doing the forget password thing.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that should work. Actually, that's actually better because you'll reset it. So when you get in here, loads up. Mine's going to take longer to load than yours. And on the left-hand side, you'll have several folders. The first is My Solutions, which is literally where you put your own stuff. And then if you keep scrolling down, or I just like to close them, you'll see My Shared Solutions. When we do the platform, you'll find that there's some pretty cool stuff on here, like when we have a decision-making thing that you can actually share with other people and make collaborative decisions. It's pretty cool. But let's see. So then if you go to Public Solutions, I've got the Executive Black Belt folder in there. You should be able to find it.
Yep.
Yeah, then you'll just download these by clicking on Open. That's a little bit weird thing. So you select them first, and then you click on Open. So I'll just do the tools just a moment.
Yeah, I saw you do this part. I just couldn't, for some reason when I signed into the website, it took me to a different page, but that's probably because I was resetting my password and it took me to a different portal or something.
Okay.
But I see how you got in there now. And then so I just need to go through and download all 5 of those and put them on my desktop for the appropriate Excel year.
Yeah, and make sure that you unzip the things that are zipped.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I mean, I know it's going to go from like 12 megabytes to 70, but
that's fine.
If you don't unzip it, I guarantee you're gonna feel pain later because everything seems like it works, but Excel macros, Excel statistics is an Excel macro thing.
Okay.
It seems to work, but then it doesn't really work. Like it doesn't work in annoying ways. So you'll want to unzip it.
Good deal, sir. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, we'll see you on Friday.
Mark.
Okay. See you, everybody.
All right.